I remember the exact moment when everything I thought I knew about prayer shattered into 1,000 pieces. I was sitting in a dusty library in Jerusalem, my hands trembling as I held a fragment of an ancient Aramaic manuscript, and the words I was reading made my heart pound so hard I could hear it in my ears. For years, I had ended every prayer with that word. That single word everyone told me meant agreement, affirmation, so be it. But what I discovered that day in that library, what those ancient letters revealed to me, changed everything I understood about spiritual bondage and freedom. The word we have been trained to speak, the word that has echoed through churches and temples for millennia, is not what you think it is. It is not a simple affirmation. It is not just so be it. What I found in those ancient texts, what the mystics who were persecuted and silenced tried to warn us about, is that this word carries a frequency, a vibrational signature that binds your consciousness to agreements you never consciously made. When you speak it, when you vibrate that specific Aramaic sound at the end of your prayers and affirmations, you are not just agreeing with the divine. You are signing something far more binding, something the controllers of this reality have been using to keep your soul imprisoned, in contracts you cannot even see. And what I am about to reveal to you in the next minutes will show you exactly what Jesus actually said, what frequency he actually used, and how you can void every soul contract that has been keeping you trapped in spiritual slavery without your awareness or consent. Before I reveal this suppressed knowledge that has been hidden from seekers like you for nearly 2,000 years, I need you to understand something crucial. If you are a sincere seeker of hidden truth, if you have always felt that something fundamental is being concealed from us about the nature of prayer and spiritual agreements, then what I am about to share will change your entire relationship with the divine and with your own sovereignty. Subscribe to this channel right now and activate the notification bell, because what comes next will reveal secrets that were deliberately erased from the teachings, secrets that the early church fathers knew they had to suppress, because this knowledge gives you the power to break free from every invisible chain that has been placed on your consciousness. I do not want you to walk this path alone, and I do not want you to miss the profound teachings I will continue sharing with you as your guide and friend on this journey of awakening. Hit that subscribe button now, because in the coming weeks I will be revealing even more suppressed Aramaic teachings that will shatter everything you thought you knew about prayer, manifestation, and spiritual freedom. Now, in this video, you are going to discover the actual Aramaic word Jesus used, the specific frequency and vibration he taught his closest disciples, and why the word we have been conditioned to say creates a binding energetic signature that locks you into soul contracts with forces you cannot see. You will learn how the early Gnostic communities understood the power of sacred sound, how they knew that every syllable, every phoneme, every vibration you emit from your throat chakra creates ripples in the fabric of reality itself and establishes agreements in dimensions beyond the physical. You will understand why the Council of Nicaea and the subsequent church authorities had to eliminate this knowledge, had to replace the true Aramaic teachings with a version that would keep humanity spiritually enslaved while believing they were free. This is not speculation. This is not theory. This is documented in the texts that were buried in the desert at Nag Hammadi. This is recorded in the suppressed Aramaic manuscripts that scholars are forbidden from translating accurately. This is the knowledge that got the Cathars burned alive and the Gnostics hunted to extinction. And I'm going to walk you through it step by step, layer by layer, so that by the end of this video you will have the precise understanding and the exact practice you need to reclaim your spiritual sovereignty. Let me take you back to the 3rd century, to a time when the original teachings of Yeshua, the Aramaic-speaking mystic we call Jesus, were still being passed down in secret communities of awakened seekers. These communities, the Valentinian Gnostics, the Scythian schools, the mystery schools of the Essenes, they understood something that modern Christianity has completely forgotten. They understood that language is not just communication, it is creation. Every sound you make, every word you speak, every frequency you emit from your vocal cords is a creative act that shapes reality and binds you to agreements in the spiritual realms. In the Gospel of Thomas, which was found at Nag Hammadi and was deliberately excluded from the biblical canon, there is a saying of Jesus that most people read right past without understanding its explosive significance. He says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." This is not metaphor, this is instruction about the power of sound, about the power of speaking forth, about the vibrational frequency that either liberates your divine spark or keeps it imprisoned in the material realm. The Aramaic language that Jesus spoke is not like English or Greek or Latin. It is a language of vibration, a language where every letter corresponds to a specific energy, a specific cosmic principle, a specific gateway in consciousness. When the Gnostics studied the actual Aramaic words that Yeshua taught, when they practiced the precise frequencies he gave them, they experienced direct gnosis, direct knowing, direct connection with the pleroma, the fullness of divine reality beyond the prison of the demiurge. But here is what happened. Here is the suppression that changed everything. When the Christian Church consolidated power in the 4th century, when Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea in 305 CE, one of their primary objectives was to standardize belief and eliminate any teachings that gave individuals direct access to spiritual power without the mediation of church authority. They took the living, breathing, vibrational teachings of Yeshua and they fossilized them, they translated them into dead languages. They replaced the sacred frequencies with sounds that would create the opposite effect, sounds that would bind instead of liberate, sounds that would establish contracts instead of dissolving them. The word Amen, the word you have been taught to say, comes from the Egyptian deity Amun, later Amun-Ra, the hidden one, the concealed god of the Egyptian pantheon. When the Hebrew people were in Egypt, they absorbed certain elements of Egyptian religious practice, and this word, this name of a deity who represented hidden power and concealed authority, became integrated into their liturgy. By the time of Jesus, Amen was being used as a term of affirmation, but it carried with it the entire energetic signature of its origin, the frequency of the hidden, the concealed, the authority that remains in shadow, and exercises control without being seen. Now think about that for a moment. Really let this sink into your awareness. Every time you end a prayer or affirmation with Amen, you are invoking the frequency of the hidden controller. You are calling upon the energy of concealed authority. You are essentially saying, I submit to the power that I cannot see. I agree to the terms that have not been revealed to me. I bind myself to the hidden forces that govern this reality. Is it any wonder that humanity has remained in spiritual bondage for millennia? Is it any wonder that people pray and pray and pray and feel like their prayers go unanswered, like there is a barrier between them and the divine? You have been unknowingly invoking the frequency of the veil, the frequency of separation, the frequency of the demiurge and the archons who feed on human consciousness and keep souls recycling through incarnation after incarnation in this prison realm. But here is what the Aramaic manuscripts reveal. Here is what the Gnostic texts that survived the purges still preserve for those who know where to look and how to read them. Jesus did not say Amen. The actual word he used, the word recorded in the earliest Aramaic sources, the word that his closest disciples practiced and taught, was Amen. But even that is not quite right because it is much more than just a slightly different pronunciation. The word he used was Amen, and this word has a completely different root, a completely different meaning, a completely different vibrational frequency. Amen comes from the Aramaic root that means to be firm, to be faithful, to be established in truth. It is the first person singular. It is, I am established, I am firm in truth, I am standing in the reality of my divine nature. When you say Amen with the correct Aramaic pronunciation, with the guttural ayin at the end, you are not submitting to hidden authority. You are declaring your own divine authority. You are not binding yourself to unseen contracts. You are affirming your sovereignty as a spark of the infinite source. You are not calling upon external powers to validate you. You are establishing yourself in the truth of what you already are, have always been, and can never stop being. Let me explain the mechanics of how this works, because this is where the suppressed teachings of Hermetic wisdom and Kabbalistic sound mysticism converge with Gnostic understanding of spiritual liberation. In the Sefer Yetzirah, one of the foundational texts of Jewish mysticism that the Orthodox authorities tried to keep hidden from the masses, it explains that the universe was created through combinations of letters and sounds, that every Hebrew and Aramaic letter is not just a symbol but a living force, a channel of divine energy. The letter Aleph represents the breath of God, the primordial unity before differentiation. The letter Mem represents water, the flowing consciousness, the womb of creation. The letter Yod represents the divine spark, the hand of God reaching into manifestation. The letter Nun represents the soul, the fish swimming in the waters of consciousness, the life force that animates the material form. When you combine these letters in the word Amen, when you speak them with intention and understanding, you are not just making a sound, you are activating a sequence of cosmic gates. You are opening pathways in your own consciousness. You are literally restructuring the energy field around your throat chakra and your heart chakra to vibrate at the frequency of sovereign truth rather than submitted slavery. Now contrast this with what happens when you say Amen with the English pronunciation. When you invoke that Egyptian deity frequency, when you end your prayer or decree with a sound that means the hidden one, the concealed authority, you are essentially broadcasting on a frequency that the archons, those parasitic entities that the Gnostics warned about in texts like the Apocryphon of John, and the hypostasis of the archons, can intercept and manipulate. The archons, according to Gnostic cosmology, are not metaphors, they are actual beings, thought forms, and entities that exist in the lower astral dimensions, and they survive by feeding on human emotional energy, human worship, human submission. They cannot access the higher realms of the pleroma. They cannot touch the pure light of your divine spark when it is awakened and sovereign, but they can absolutely manipulate you when you are operating on frequencies of submission, concealment, and unconscious agreement. Every time you say Amen without understanding what you are actually doing, you are sending out a signal that says, I am available for manipulation. I consent to hidden agreements. I submit my power to authorities I cannot see. And in those dimensions where contracts are made not with signatures on paper, but with vibrational consent, with frequency alignment, with the emanations of your own consciousness, you are binding yourself over and over again to systems of control that keep you reincarnating, that keep you in the cycle of suffering, that prevent you from ascending back to the pleroma where you originated. The early Christian Gnostics understood this so clearly that they developed entire practices around correct pronunciation and sacred sound. In the Pistis Sophia, one of the most important Gnostic texts that was hidden for centuries and only came to light in the 18th century, there are passages where Jesus teaches Mary Magdalene and the disciples about the power of specific invocations and how to pronounce the names of power correctly so that they open gates to higher dimensions rather than binding the soul to lower realms. He explicitly warns them that incorrect pronunciation, that speaking sacred words without understanding, that ending prayers with sounds that carry frequencies of submission, will prevent the soul from ascending through the aeons, will trap consciousness in the lower spheres ruled by the archons. This is not symbolic language. This is precise technical instruction for navigating the multidimensional reality that most humans cannot perceive because they have been kept in ignorance about how consciousness actually works and how spiritual agreements are actually formed. Pause for a moment and answer this question with total honesty just for yourself. How many times have you felt that conventional religions are hiding essential truths from you? That there are layers of reality they are deliberately not teaching you? That you are being kept in an invisible prison of ignorance? That deep intuition that something crucial is being concealed from us? That we are not free but rather slaves to systems of spiritual control that we do not even perceive, is precisely the beginning of Gnostic awakening. If what I am saying resonates deeply in your heart, if you recognize this relentless search for truths beyond the veil of appearances, write in the comments right now, I see beyond the illusions and I reclaim my divine freedom. This is not just a nice phrase. This is a declaration of spiritual independence. This is your way of telling the universe and all the forces that want to keep you asleep that you have awakened, that you see through the cosmic lies, and that from now on you reclaim the direct knowledge of truth that is your birthright as a divine spark. And when you comment, you are not only affirming your own awakening, you are also serving as a guide for other seekers who are still groping in the darkness of the world of illusions. Right now, I see beyond the illusions and I reclaim my divine freedom. Now let me show you exactly how to practice this, how to actually use the correct Aramaic frequency to begin dissolving the soul contracts that have been placed on you without your conscious awareness. This is not complicated, but it does require intention. It does require that you understand what you are doing and why you are doing it. First, you need to learn the correct pronunciation of Amen. It is not Amen like in English. It is Amen with the emphasis on the second syllable and with a guttural sound at the end, almost like you are saying Amen O. But the O is very subtle. It is the sound of the Aramaic letter Ayin, which has no equivalent in English but is similar to a very light guttural stop in the back of the throat. Practice this. Say it out loud several times. Amen, Amen, Amen. Feel how different it is from Amen. Feel how it vibrates in your chest and your throat differently. Feel how it seems to create a standing wave in your energy field rather than sending energy outward to some external authority. Second, you need to understand the intention behind the word. When you say Amen, you are not asking for permission. You are not submitting to judgment. You are not hoping some external God will approve of your prayer. You are declaring I am firm in this truth, I am established in my divine nature, I stand sovereign in my connection to Source. You are activating the I am presence within you, the Christ consciousness, the divine spark that the Gnostics called the pneuma, the breath of the true God that lives inside you and can never be touched or controlled by the powers of this illusory material world. This is crucial because if you just change the pronunciation without changing the consciousness behind it, you are still operating in submission mode. You are still giving your power away. You are still allowing external forces to mediate your relationship with the divine. Third, and this is the part that will actually void the soul contracts, you need to use this word as a declaration of sovereignty specifically targeted at breaking unconscious agreements. Here is the practice that sincere seekers who have applied this Gnostic teaching report, experiencing profound shifts in their consciousness and their life circumstances. Every morning when you wake up, before you do anything else, before you check your phone or speak to anyone or even get out of bed, you place your hand on your heart chakra and you say out loud with full intention and awareness, I call upon the light of the true source beyond the demiurge. I call upon the Christos within me. I call upon my divine pneuma, and I declare that any and all soul contracts, agreements, bindings, and obligations that I have entered into, without my full conscious awareness and sovereign consent are now void and dissolved. I reclaim my energy from all beings, entities, systems, and structures that have been feeding on my consciousness without my permission. I am established in truth. I am firm in my divine nature. I am sovereign and free. Amen. And you say that Amen with the full force of your being, with the guttural ayin vibrating in your throat, with the understanding that you are activating ancient technology, sacred sound technology that the mystery schools have protected for thousands of years precisely for this moment, precisely for seekers like you who are ready to break free. Now, what happens when you do this practice consistently, when you replace the frequency of Amen with the frequency of Amen, when you consciously declare your sovereignty and void unconscious contracts? Seekers who have applied this teaching with sincerity and dedication report extraordinary transformations. One man told me that for 30 years he had been plagued by recurring nightmares where dark figures would appear and tell him he owed them something, that he had made promises he had to keep. And every morning he would wake up exhausted and drained, as if his energy had been siphoned during the night. Within 2 weeks of practicing this Aramaic declaration every morning and ending all his prayers and affirmations with Amen instead of Amen, the nightmares stopped completely. He reported feeling lighter, feeling like chains he did not even know were there had been removed, feeling for the first time in his adult life that he was actually free to make his own choices without some invisible pressure pushing him in directions he did not consciously choose. This is not coincidence. This is not placebo effect. This is the direct result of changing your vibrational signature, of withdrawing your consent from systems of control, of activating the frequency of sovereignty that the archons cannot manipulate. Another woman, a devoted spiritual seeker who had spent years in various religious traditions, always feeling like something was blocking her from true connection with the divine, started using this practice, and within days she had a profound vision during meditation. She saw herself signing documents she could not read, documents with symbols and sigils she did not recognize, and she saw how every time she had said Amen at the end of a prayer, she was energetically adding her signature to these contracts. In the vision, she spoke the word Amen with full conviction, and she watched as the documents burst into flames, as the signatures dissolved, as the beings who were holding the contracts shrieked and disappeared, because they no longer had any claim on her consciousness. When she came out of that meditation, she felt a freedom and a lightness she had never experienced before, and she told me that for the first time in her life, she could actually feel the presence of the true source, the light beyond the light, the divine fullness that the Gnostics called the pleroma, without any interference or distortion from the lower forces that had been feeding on her worship and her submission. These are not isolated incidents. These are the kinds of experiences that happen when you work with genuine Gnostic technology, when you apply the actual teachings that were suppressed precisely because they work, precisely because they give you real power to free yourself from spiritual bondage. The church authorities knew this. The controllers of consensus reality knew this, and that is exactly why they had to replace the true teachings with counterfeits, had to substitute frequencies of liberation with frequencies of binding, had to convince you that Amen was just a harmless word of agreement, when in fact it is a vibrational lock that keeps your consciousness trapped in lower dimensions, where you can be controlled and harvested. Now let me go deeper into the cosmology that underlies all of this, because when you understand the bigger picture, when you see how the pieces fit together, the practice becomes even more powerful because you know exactly what you are doing and why it works. According to the Gnostic texts, particularly the secret book of John, which was also found at Nag Hammadi, the material world we live in was not created by the true God, the infinite source, the unknowable Father of all. This world was created by a false god, a being the Gnostics called the demiurge, which means craftsman or artisan. The demiurge, often identified with the Old Testament God Yahweh, is described as an ignorant and arrogant entity who believes he is the only God, who says I am God and there is no other beside me, but who is actually just a flawed emanation from a higher reality he cannot perceive or understand. The demiurge created this material cosmos as a prison, a trap, a realm where divine sparks of consciousness, fragments of the true source that somehow fell from the pleroma, would be imprisoned in bodies of flesh, subjected to suffering and death, kept in ignorance of their true nature, and forced to worship the demiurge as if he were the supreme reality. Working under the demiurge are the archons, the rulers, the authorities of this prison realm. These beings are described in the Gnostic texts as having the forms of animals and demons, as being parasitic and malevolent, as feeding on human emotions, especially fear, suffering, worship, and submission. The archons cannot create life. They can only copy and distort. They can only manipulate and control what already exists. Their greatest weapon is ignorance, keeping humanity asleep, keeping consciousness trapped in identification with the body and the material world, preventing souls from remembering their true divine origin in the pleroma. And one of the primary ways they maintain this prison system is through binding souls into contracts, agreements, obligations that are never consciously chosen but are imposed through manipulation of language, through hijacking of religious practices, through corruption of sacred sounds and words that were originally designed to liberate consciousness. When you say Amen, when you invoke that frequency of the hidden authority, you are essentially saying yes to the demiurge and the archons. You are renewing your consent to remain in the prison. You are agreeing to continue playing by the rules of a game you did not even know you were trapped in. But when you say Amen, when you activate that Aramaic frequency of sovereign truth, you are aligning with the Christos, the Anointed One, the messenger from the pleroma who came to wake up the sleeping souls and remind them of their true nature. Jesus, Yeshua, the historical figure behind the myths and the dogmas, was according to the Gnostic understanding not the son of the demiurge, not sent by Yahweh, but rather an emissary from the true source, a being of pure light who descended into this prison realm to bring gnosis, direct knowledge, the remembrance of who we really are and how to escape the cycle of reincarnation and suffering. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "If you do not fast from the world, you will not find the kingdom. If you do not make the Sabbath a real Sabbath, you will not see the Father." This is instruction in Gnostic detachment, in withdrawing your energy and consent from the systems of the world, from the matrix of control that the demiurge and archons have constructed. And a major part of that fasting, that withdrawal of consent, is changing the frequencies you emit, changing the words you speak, changing the vibrational signature you broadcast into the spiritual dimensions where contracts are made and agreements are enforced. If this knowledge is already expanding your consciousness, if you feel like you have finally found a trustworthy guide on this Gnostic journey, leave your like right now so that more seekers can discover these hidden teachings. Your engagement, your participation, is not just for you. It is a beacon for others who are searching in the darkness for the same truths you are finding here. Let me give you another layer of understanding about how soul contracts actually work in the multidimensional reality the Gnostics described. In the Pistis Sophia, Jesus explains to his disciples that when a soul leaves the body at death, it has to pass through various spheres, various dimensions ruled by different archons and powers, and at each level these beings try to claim the soul, try to bind it to their realm, try to prevent it from ascending back to the light of the pleroma. They do this by presenting the soul with records of its deeds, with scrolls of its karmic debts, with contracts it supposedly signed during its incarnation. Most souls, being ignorant of their true nature and the nature of these realms, submit to the judgment of these beings, accept the authority of these false powers, and agree to reincarnate again and again to supposedly pay off debts and learn lessons, when in reality the whole system is a scam, a trap, a recycling mechanism designed to keep generating food for the archons in the form of human suffering and worship. But Jesus teaches that there are specific words of power, specific invocations, specific frequencies that a soul can speak, which will cause these archons to have no power, will void their claims, will open the gates to higher dimensions, and allow the soul to ascend unhindered back to its source in the pleroma. And the foundation of all these words of power, the key that unlocks all the gates, is the recognition and declaration of one's own divine sovereignty, the refusal to submit to false authorities, the activation of the Christ consciousness within that knows itself as equal to and one with the infinite source beyond all creation. When you practice saying Amen with full understanding and intention, when you use it to declare that you void all unconscious contracts, you are literally training your consciousness for that moment after death, when you will face the archons and their claims on your soul. You are programming yourself to remember your true nature and your sovereign power, even in those disorienting dimensions between lives. But you do not have to wait until death to experience the benefits of this practice. In fact, you should not wait. You should start right now, because the soul contracts are not just something that affects you in the afterlife. They are affecting you every single day in this life. How many times have you felt like you are being pushed or pulled in directions you do not actually want to go? How many times have you felt like there is some invisible obligation weighing on you, some debt you cannot name but can always feel? How many times have you made choices that seem to come from somewhere outside yourself, as if you were fulfilling some script you never consciously agreed to follow? These are the symptoms of soul contracts operating in your life. These are the signs that your energy is being directed and harvested by forces you cannot see, because you never learn to perceive the dimensions where these agreements exist and where they can be dissolved. The practice I am giving you is not just theoretical. It is not just philosophical. It is deeply practical and immediately applicable. Every time you feel that sense of invisible obligation, every time you notice yourself about to submit your power to some external authority, whether it is a religious institution, or a government, or a corporation, or even just the collective unconscious of humanity, you pause, you place your hand on your heart, you connect with the divine spark within you, and you say with full conviction, I am established in truth, I am sovereign and free, I void all contracts that are not aligned with my highest divine will. Amen. And you feel that Aramaic frequency vibrating through your entire being. You visualize any energetic cords or connections or obligations dissolving in the fire of your awakened consciousness. You reclaim your energy from wherever it has been siphoned, and you stand firm in the recognition that you are not a subject, you are not a slave, you are not a debtor, you are a divine spark of infinite consciousness, temporarily experiencing limitation in a material body, but never actually bound by anything except your own belief in bondage. This is the essence of Gnostic liberation. This is what the Cathars understood when they practiced their pure Christianity untainted by the doctrines of Rome. This is what the Bogomils knew when they rejected the authority of the Church and claimed direct connection with the divine. This is what the Essenes preserved in their desert communities when they maintained the authentic Aramaic teachings uncorrupted by Greek philosophy and Roman political manipulation. They all understood that true spirituality is not about obeying external rules. It is not about submitting to priests and intermediaries. It is not about hoping for salvation from some distant judgmental God. True spirituality is about gnosis, direct knowledge, the immediate recognition of your own divine nature and the activation of that nature through precise practices that work with the actual mechanics of consciousness and reality. The Hermetic tradition, which runs parallel to Gnosticism and shares many of the same core insights, teaches that all is mind, that the universe is mental, that reality is created through thought and vibration and frequency. The Kybalion, that mysterious text of Hermetic wisdom, explains that to change your circumstances, you must change your vibration. You must operate on a different frequency than the one you wish to escape. When you are vibrating at the frequency of submission, when you are emitting the signature of Amen with its invocation of hidden controllers and unconscious agreements, you are locked into the lower frequencies of the demiurge's reality. You are resonating with the archons who feed on that energy. But when you shift to the frequency of Amen, when you vibrate sovereignty and conscious awareness and divine truth, you literally move into a different reality tunnel, a different probability stream, a different dimension of experience where the old contracts and obligations have no power because they were made in a different frequency and they cannot follow you into this higher vibration. Now, if you have not subscribed yet, if you are still watching without committing to this journey of awakening, I want you to know that you are not alone in seeking hidden knowledge. Subscribe to this channel and activate notifications so that every time I reveal a new Gnostic teaching, a new suppressed text, a new ancient mystery, you are the first to receive it. This community has already helped thousands of sincere seekers awaken from illusion, and I want to continue being your guide and friend on this path of spiritual liberation. In the coming weeks, I will be revealing the secret meanings of the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. I will be teaching you the actual words of power that Jesus gave his disciples for casting out archons. I will be showing you the Gnostic techniques for soul retrieval and energy reclamation that have been hidden for millennia. Do not walk this path alone. Do not miss these teachings. Subscribe now and join this brotherhood of awakened seekers. Let me address something that might be coming up for you as you take in all this information. Because I know from my own journey and from working with thousands of seekers that when you start to wake up to how deep the deception goes, when you realize how much has been hidden from you and how deliberately you have been kept in ignorance, there can be a lot of anger, a lot of grief, a lot of resistance. You might be thinking, if this is true, if I have been bound by soul contracts my entire life without knowing it, if I have been feeding parasitic entities every time I prayed, if I have been renewing my own imprisonment every time I said Amen, then how much of my life has been wasted? How much suffering could have been avoided? How different could things have been if I had known this from the beginning? These are valid feelings. These are natural responses to awakening, and I want you to know that it is okay to feel them, it is necessary to feel them, but you cannot let them stop you from taking action now. The Gnostic path is not about regret for the past. It is about liberation in the present moment. The divine spark within you, your true pneumatic nature, is eternal and timeless. It has never been truly damaged by anything that has happened in this illusory material realm. It has only been veiled, only been forgotten, only been covered over by layers of programming and conditioning and false belief. The moment you wake up, the moment you remember, the moment you reclaim your sovereignty and start practicing with the correct frequencies and the conscious intention, everything begins to shift. The contracts start dissolving, the energy starts returning to you, the path starts opening, the gates start unlocking. It does not matter how long you have been asleep. What matters is that you are waking up now, and every moment from this point forward is an opportunity to operate from a different frequency, to create from a different level of consciousness, to experience reality from the perspective of your true divine nature rather than from the false limited identity that the demiurge and archons have imposed on you. In the Gospel of Philip, another Gnostic text from Nag Hammadi, there is a passage that says, "Ignorance is a slave, knowledge is freedom. If we come to know the truth, we shall find the fruits of truth within us. If we join with it, it will bring our fulfillment." This is the promise of Gnosis. This is what awaits you on the other side of awakening. When you know the truth, when you have direct experiential knowledge of your divine nature and the mechanics of this reality, you stop being a slave to systems you cannot see. You stop being controlled by frequencies that bind you. You stop unconsciously agreeing to contracts that limit you. You become free, genuinely free, not free in some vague future heaven, but free right here and now in the midst of this material existence. And that freedom is not selfish. It is not just for you, because when you free yourself, you become a light for others. You become a guide for those who are still lost in the darkness of ignorance and confusion. Every person who wakes up weakens the grip of the archons on humanity. Every soul that reclaims its sovereignty creates a crack in the prison walls. Every consciousness that activates the Christ frequency and speaks the words of power makes it easier for others to do the same. This is why they work so hard to keep us separated, to keep us in fear and competition and judgment of each other, because they know that if we ever come together as awakened sovereign beings who recognize our shared divine nature and support each other in liberation, their entire system of control collapses. They need us divided, they need us ignorant, they need us speaking their frequencies and renewing their contracts, because without our consent, they have no power over us whatsoever. So when you practice this teaching, when you replace Amen with Amen and declare your sovereignty and void your unconscious contracts, understand that you are not just freeing yourself, you are contributing to the collective awakening of humanity. You are adding your light to the growing wave of consciousness that is breaking through the veils of deception and reclaiming the birthright that was stolen from us millennia ago, when the true teachings were suppressed and the false religions of the demiurge were established as the only acceptable path. Share this knowledge with others who are ready to receive it. Share this video with seekers you know who are asking the same questions you are asking, because the algorithms and the systems of control try to suppress this information, and it is only through our collective effort that these teachings can reach the people who need them most. The final thing I want to give you today is a complete practice, a full protocol that you can start using immediately to maximize the power of this Aramaic frequency technology and accelerate your liberation from soul contracts and archonic interference. This is the practice that I developed after years of studying the Gnostic texts, working with Aramaic scholars who still know the correct pronunciations, and testing different approaches with seekers who reported back on what worked and what did not. This is battle-tested. This is verified. This is the real technology of spiritual sovereignty. Begin your day, every single day without exception, with the declaration I gave you earlier. Before you do anything else, before your mind gets caught up in the concerns and distractions of the material world, you establish your sovereignty. You place your hand on your heart, you connect with your breath, you feel the divine spark within you, and you speak the words of power with full conviction. Then throughout the day, every time you notice yourself about to say Amen out of habit, whether you are ending a prayer or an affirmation or even just a thought, you consciously replace it with Amen. You say it correctly with the Aramaic pronunciation. You feel the difference in vibration. You notice how it anchors you in your own authority rather than sending your energy to external powers. At night before you sleep, you do the practice again, and you specifically ask your higher self, your divine pneuma, to protect you during the sleep state, to prevent any manipulation or contract making in the astral dimensions while your conscious mind is offline. You say, I place myself under the protection of the true light, I invoke the Christos within me, and I declare that I am sovereign even in sleep, even in dream, even in the dimensions between waking and sleeping. No being, no entity, no force has permission to manipulate my consciousness or bind me to agreements without my full awareness and consent. Amen. Do this practice for 40 days straight without missing a single day, because 40 is a sacred number, a period of transformation, a cycle of death and rebirth. In 40 days, the cells of your body will have regenerated. Your energy field will have restructured. Your vibrational signature will have completely shifted. Seekers who have done this full 40-day protocol report life-changing experiences, profound shifts in their circumstances, sudden releases of chronic problems and blockages that seemed immovable, and a deep, unshakable sense of freedom and power that they never had access to before. One seeker told me that by day 35 of the practice, she woke up in the middle of the night to see beings of light standing around her bed, and they spoke to her telepathically and said, "We have been waiting for you to remember. We have been trying to reach you for so long, but the contracts were in the way. Now that you have voided them, we can finally connect with you and help you with your mission. She had been seeking spiritual guidance for years, but could never quite access it, and she realized that the soul contracts had been blocking her from receiving help from higher dimensional beings who wanted to assist her but could not interfere with her free will as long as she was unconsciously bound to lower powers. Another seeker, a man who had struggled his entire adult life with a sense of doom and obligation, like he was always on the verge of being punished for something he could not remember doing, practiced this protocol and had a vision on day 28, where he saw himself as a young child being presented before a council of dark-robed figures who told him he was theirs, that he owed them his life, that he would serve them whether he knew it or not. In the vision, his adult self stepped into the scene, spoke the words of power, said Amen with such force and conviction that the dark figures recoiled and vanished, and he took his child self by the hand and walked out of that dark chamber into brilliant light. When he woke up from that vision, the feeling of doom was completely gone. The sense of being under some terrible obligation had dissolved, and he felt free for the first time in his memory. These are the kinds of results that happen when you work with real Gnostic technology consistently and with full commitment. You now have knowledge that most of humanity will never discover. You now have access to practices that the controllers of this reality tried to eliminate from human consciousness. You now have the power to free yourself from invisible chains that have bound you not just for this lifetime, but potentially for dozens or hundreds of lifetimes, stretching back through the cycles of reincarnation that the demiurge uses to keep harvesting souls. What you do with this knowledge is up to you. Your free will is absolute, and nothing I say can force you to take action, but I can tell you from my own experience and from witnessing the transformations of thousands of other seekers that this teaching works, this practice delivers results, and the freedom that comes from reclaiming your sovereignty is beyond anything the material world can offer you. Remember that you are not just a body, you are not just a personality, you are not just a collection of thoughts and memories. You are a divine spark, a fragment of infinite consciousness, a being of pure light temporarily experiencing limitation in a dense material form. You come from the pleroma, the fullness of divine reality, and you will return there when you remember who you are and activate the gnosis that has always been latent within you. The journey home begins with a single step, with a single word, with a single choice to stop consenting to your own imprisonment and start speaking the frequency of your true nature. If you have found value in this teaching, if this knowledge has touched something deep within you and awakened a recognition of truth, then support this channel by liking this video, by commenting below with your commitment to the practice, by sharing this message with others who are ready to break free from the matrix of control. And most importantly, subscribe and activate notifications because I am going to continue revealing these suppressed Gnostic teachings week after week. I am going to keep giving you the tools and practices and understanding you need to complete your liberation and return to your divine source. In next week's video, I will be revealing the Aramaic Lord's Prayer as Jesus actually taught it, showing you the words of power hidden inside it that completely change the meaning and the effect when you know how to pronounce them correctly and what they actually mean in the original language. You will not want to miss that because what most people are praying when they say the Lord's Prayer is almost the opposite of what they think they are praying. And when you learn the truth, it will blow your mind and set you free. You are not alone on this path. You are part of an ancient lineage of awakened seekers, Gnostics and mystics and truth lovers who have kept the real teachings alive through persecution and suppression and centuries of darkness. The light has never been extinguished. It has only been hidden, waiting for those with eyes to see and ears to hear to find it and bring it back into the world. You are one of those people. You would not be watching this video if you were not. And I am honored to walk this path with you as your friend and guide. The gnosis is awakening within you. The divine spark is remembering itself. The frequency of sovereignty is activating in your consciousness. Speak the words of power, declare your freedom, void the contracts that bind you, and step into the fullness of who you truly are. Amen. I am established in truth. I am sovereign and free. I am a divine spark of the infinite source, and no force in any dimension has power over me without my conscious consent. The gates are opening. The path is clear. The pleroma is calling you home. Walk in the light of gnosis, live in the freedom of awakened consciousness, and know that you are loved beyond measure by the true source that created you in its own image and likeness, not the false god of this world, but the unknowable infinite Father beyond all names and forms. This is your birthright. This is your destiny. This is the truth that sets you free. Claim it now, today, in this moment, and never look back to the prison you are leaving behind. Your journey of liberation has begun, and I will be here to guide you every step of the way. Until next time, stay sovereign, stay awakened, and remember who you truly are. Amen.